Ahoy! Today we're talking about a meteoric rise in gaming. Okay, that's a bit overdramatic, but HiRez has announced something very interesting. Stu posted on Twitter, more people have played Rogue Company in the last 24 hours than have ever played any HiRez game in a 24-hour period before. And that was yesterday. Today he posted an amendment. Rogue Company had 25 more people play than yesterday, meaning 50% more people played Rogue Company today than have ever played any other HiRez game, Smite, Paladins or Realm Royale in a single day. Approximately 2.5 million new players since the open beta started midday on Wednesday. I think this is fascinating. We'll get to the implications for other HiRez games in a bit, but first let's talk about what these numbers really mean. Because HiRez had games explode before. Smite and Paladins mostly had a gradual increase in player base because they went from their early beta stages to being more refined games over time. And if that is your development cycle, then you don't really get massive spikes in player base because you get people coming into the game, testing it out, maybe liking it, maybe not liking it, so some return, some will not return, and you just get a steady increase, which is definitely good for a game's long-term health, but it doesn't give you those massive spiking numbers. But HiRez also released Realm Royale. And Realm Royale was massively pushed initially, not on purpose, not in a planned way, but because it just had launched, I think, into open beta or open alpha even, so everyone could play it. And on that same day, the Fortnite servers went down. So it got a massive unexpected boost from various content creators that played a somewhat similar-ish game. And at that time, we're also looking for something new, so that was perfect timing for them. And I am really surprised that did not bring in more players overall. It seems that the push here was actually more effective with Rogue Company, which drove a slightly different strategy. And if at this point you're thinking, is HiRez doomed to repeat their mistakes, we also get to that. So why I think the numbers are higher for Rogue Company here is because of the way they launched it. It was in a closed alpha state for quite a while, and if you look at these charts here, actually it had a lot of viewers at that point already, because I think they already ran quite a few promotions, so people knew about the game, but most couldn't play it unless you were willing to spend, I think, at least $30 on it to get the early access. Instead, most people waited obviously until the game was free to play. And now with the open beta, HiRez essentially drove a secondary marketing push. They sponsored multiple streamers to play it. I think they sponsored at least Ninja, Shroud and Nadeshot, if not more, because I found clips from all of them from the recent few days. And Ninja actually enjoyed the game so much that he kept playing with Scott Gandhi afterwards, one of the main devs on the game and kind of the face of Rogue Company. So that was a huge amount of promotion for Rogue Company. And a lot of people that hadn't heard about the game before had the chance to try it out, and people that had heard about the game before now knew that it was in open beta and they could actually play it. The viewer spikes on Twitch weren't completely insane. The game was at 45,000 viewers maximum the other day, which I think is less than Realm Royale had. I'm not 100% sure because I couldn't find the charts, but as far as I am aware, that game had a fair bit more because of Fortnite being down. But this number doesn't really matter that much if it translates well into in-game players, which also tells us that viewer numbers on Twitch are not everything, because it also, for example, depends on how motivated the players are to play themselves. Also, a game like Rogue Company with two teams offers a little bit of a different incentive for stream snipers. If you are someone who wants to get recognized by Ninja and you want to play a whole round against him, which can go above 10 minutes, then that's something that you wouldn't really have in a Battle Royale where you fight briefly against a single player and not fight them over and over. So maybe that's something that drove a few more players to download the game as well. Outside of that, the way that Rogue Company has been handled so far is also something that I think plays a role, because Scott Gandhi has communicated any changes incredibly well. He's made short, somewhat funny Twitter videos where he clearly outlines the current plan, the options for patches, in a detail that I wish they had for Smite, for example, where they really just address what exactly the concern is, which options they're considering, why they're doing it, and which one they're most likely going for and what they're going to try out first. In brief videos, again, not something too long. I think seeing something like this encourages people who loosely follow the game to just try it out as well and see how the game actually feels and if they like it at the point where they can get access to it. Now for the concerns. One concern obviously is always, will HiRez drop their other games because of that? Somebody responded to Stu's tweet with RIP Smite. In response to that, multiple HiRez employees actually said Smite's not going anywhere but up, and HiRez Kilgoon specifically, who is kind of overseeing all the HiRez games now, also said something in that tone, said, let me assure you, Smite isn't going anywhere. I don't think there would be any benefit for HiRez in neglecting Smite. That's because Smite and Rogue Company are in vastly different genres, and they didn't do it when Paladins came out, not to a large extent at least. They didn't do it when Realm Royale came out. They know that Smite is consistent income. They know that MOBAs in general have a very dedicated player base, not the biggest player base, but one that usually doesn't leave very easily and is willing to spend money on the game. So I would be very surprised if they consider ditching Smite over this at any point, really. I think for a company of their size, it's smarter to have feet in multiple markets anyways, and that's why they branched out into the multiple studios as well, so they are more separate projects in a way. Also, with how Cthulhu went and everything, I feel like this might be Smite's most financially successful season so far. We don't have any official numbers, but it would seem like that to me from the hype that I've seen around things. So I would not assume that they have any interest in slowing down in that regard. And the other concern is, of course, will they pull another Realm Royale? Well, first of all, the people that were involved in Realm Royale, that this hinged on, many of the decisions hinged on, I think the main person behind it was HiRez, aren't involved with Rogue Company. So you don't have the same people steering the wheel, and it seems like decision-making wise, it's mostly Scott Gundy, who is very familiar with competitive shooter environments anyways, and that's kind of his whole selling point. So I don't see why he would go the same way. Outside of that, there was also a very interesting article on the Unity Technologies blog. And that is why HiRez isn't worried about the launch of Rogue Company. And what it says in that article, which I find very fascinating in hindsight, they actually used physical servers for Realm Royale when it came out. And they specifically had to buy more servers. And that's, as far as I'm aware, relatively unconventional these days, because typically what you see in the gaming world are scalable cloud servers. This is, for example, something that is often done through the Amazon hosting services, because that means if you suddenly get a huge spike in players, you can accommodate that. You just have more servers available at that point who will carry that load for you, whereas that's not possible if you have a specific set number of servers, which is also an issue if then the number goes back down again, because then you have all these extra running servers that don't really do anything anymore. But as it turns out, since then HiRez has actually changed their hosting system, and they are on Unity's multiplayer now, which is a cloud server, so that part will not be a problem anymore, and that is a large issue of why, initially at least, they were bleeding so many players on Realm Royale, because people were just trying to get into the game and then leaving immediately because they couldn't even get into it and were in queue or didn't get a server or something. In addition to that, I found an article from gamesindustry.biz which describes the development of Rogue Company, and it says Rogue Company has attracted more than 2 million players since the early access version of the game was made available in July. According to HiRez, it's the most successful game launch in the history of the company. Now, I don't know if successful is just tied to the number of players or financial aspects of it, because that would be a little bit misleading given the fact that you initially had to pay to get into Rogue Company. So that's why they initially had higher profits. But if it's just based on the player number, which makes sense given that HiRez is a larger company now as well, then it seems to be relatively successful overall. And since then, again, Stu said they had 2.5 million new players. I don't know, because there's a little bit of a time overlap since the article and this post. If it's maybe a little bit less than that, I would assume it's maybe like 4 million in total, all in all together. Unless there was a massive spike on the very first day it went into open beta, then it could be less than, it's maybe like 3 million. But either way, it seems that there is a good popularity coming into the game for a sustainable long-term future of it. Now, if HiRez is going to be able to hold these players is obviously a different question, but we know that they're at least working in that direction. For example, they're at the moment working on a map that is in collaboration with Mr. Lawsuit himself, Dr. Disrespect. So the game will most certainly attract another influx of new players at some point. It's probably not going to be the next Valorant with a third-person perspective, it's its own niche anyways, but I do think it has potential to find its footing as exactly that, the third-person ability-based tactical team shooter. As you can tell from the gameplay, that's definitely not something for me personally, but that's fine. It's something that I think a lot of people out there are generally interested in. I'm curious to see what HiRez has planned next, and I hope that it benefits Smite in the long run by bringing the name up a little bit more, pushing a bit more money into the company that then can also be used maybe a little bit back into Smite or into projects that revolve around Smite at least, and we'll see if that happens in the future. With that, thank you guys very much for watching. I hope this was interesting and insightful. If you're new to the channel, feel your sub button and maybe the bell for more Hi-Rez related content updates of any kind. And other than that, I hope to see you for the next one soon. SLOTH out.